The room was quiet enough to hear porcelain crack. No music, no laughter, just the soft clink of glass and the low hum of polite conversation that never meant anything. Adrian Cross didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood by the counter, one hand steady on the kettle, his posture relaxed, almost calm, like this was nothing, like this was normal. Then he poured. The water hit Lena's shoulder in a sudden burst of white heat, too fast, too sharp. The sound came after, the cup slipping from her hand, shattering against the floor, a clean, violent crack that cut through the room. No one moved, not Noah, not Clara, not even Henry, who always noticed power when it shifted. They just stood there, watching. Maybe next time, Adrian said, his voice smooth, almost gentle, you'll remember your place. Lena didn't scream. She didn't step back, didn't raise her voice, didn't even flinch the way they expected her to. Instead, she looked up, first at him, then slowly, one by one, at every face in the room. Noah looked away too quickly. Clara froze, her hands still wrapped around her glass. Henry held her gaze for just a second longer, long enough to understand. The air felt different now, thicker, heavier, like something had broken, but not in a way anyone could fix. Lena reached for a napkin, pressed it lightly against her skin, careful, controlled. I'm fine, she said. No one believed her, but no one argued. Adrian set the kettle down with a soft click. Let's not overreact, he added. It was an accident. The word hung there, thin, convenient. Lena didn't respond. She just stood there, quiet, still burned. And in that silence, something shifted. Because the woman they thought they understood, the quiet one, the forgettable one, was the only person in that room who could end Adrian Cross's $10 billion deal with a single decision. They just didn't know it yet. From the outside, it made perfect sense. Adrian Cross and Lena Cross. A clean pairing, easy to understand. The kind of marriage people accepted without asking questions. He moved through rooms like he owned them. Sharp suits, precise words. Every sentence measured, every gesture controlled. People listened when Adrian spoke. They leaned in. They adjusted themselves around him. He looked like momentum, like success that never slowed down. And beside him, Lena. Quiet, composed, always there, but never in the way. She smiled at the right moments, nodded when expected. Asked small, careful questions that didn't interrupt the flow of anything important. At dinners, she sat just slightly behind the center of the conversation, close enough to belong, far enough to be overlooked. Not invisible, but easy to forget. That was the mistake. Adrian's colleagues saw exactly what they expected to see. A supportive wife, calm, polished, predictable, safe. They never looked long enough to notice what wasn't said. The pauses, the way Lena listened without reacting, the way her eyes stayed still when others filled the space with noise. At home, it was different. Not louder, not obvious, just sharper. Adrian didn't shout. He didn't need to. If Lena chose a restaurant, he would glance at the menu and say, next time, pick somewhere better. If she spoke during a conversation he cared about, he let her finish, then repeated her words more clearly, like correcting something incomplete, like translating her into something useful. And slowly, quietly, the pattern settled in. Lena spoke less, not because she had nothing to say, because she understood something Adrian didn't. Not every imbalance needed to be challenged in the moment. Some things were better, remembered, so she watched, she listened, and she let them believe she was exactly who they thought she was, just a wife, nothing more, nothing dangerous. Adrian never needed to raise his voice. That was the first thing people misunderstood. Control didn't come from volume. It came from precision, from timing, from knowing exactly when to step in and when to let silence do the work. He corrected things, small things, easy things, things no one else would notice. Next time he would say, glancing at her plate, order something more appropriate. Or later, in the middle of a conversation, he would tilt his head slightly and repeat her words back, smoother, sharper. What Lena means, he would say, smiling lightly, is that the market is shifting faster than expected. Same idea, different weight. And somehow, his version always stayed in the room longer. Lena would nod, quiet, still, like it didn't matter, like she agreed, but she didn't. She just understood something deeper, something quieter. Every correction left a mark, not visible, not immediate. But over time, the air changed. It became easier to stay silent than to speak and be reshaped, easier to step back than to be adjusted in front of people who would never notice the difference anyway. Adrian believed that silence meant agreement. He believed that because it made his world simpler, cleaner, predictable. But Lena's silence wasn't empty. It was full of pauses she didn't fill, full of words she didn't waste, full of moments she chose to keep instead of challenge. She watched him closely, the way his tone shifted when he felt pressure, the slight delay before he answered a question he didn't expect, the confidence that sometimes arrived just a fraction too late. Small things, always small things. But small things, repeated enough times, stopped being small. They became structure. And once a structure formed, it didn't need to be explained. It revealed itself. Adrian thought he was shaping the environment. He thought he was in control. He didn't see what Lena was doing. Not yet. She wasn't resisting. She was recording. Her phone looked ordinary. Just another device on the kitchen counter. Screen down, silent, nothing special. But inside, everything was there. Lena didn't collect memories. She collected records. Screenshots of messages Adrian had already forgotten. Emails he forwarded without thinking, assuming she would never read past the first line. Voicemails left late at night, his voice slightly different, less controlled, more honest. Each file had a place. Each moment had a timestamp. She didn't rush, didn't react. She stored a folder for conversations, another for financial patterns, another for tone shifts, the way his words changed when pressure built around him. Even the smallest details mattered. A calendar overlap that didn't make sense. A delay in response that felt just slightly off. A sentence that started confident, then adjusted halfway through. Nothing dramatic, nothing anyone else would notice. But Lena noticed. She built it slowly, quietly, not out of fear, out of structure. Adrian never asked about her phone, never questioned her routines. To him, Lena existed in a fixed position, stable, predictable, background, safe. He believed there was nothing beneath that surface worth uncovering. That belief protected him, for a while. At night, when the house settled into silence, Lena would sit with her screen glowing softly in the dark, not scrolling, not searching, reviewing, each piece fitting exactly where it belonged. No emotion, no judgment, just alignment. She wasn't trying to prove anything, not yet. She was building something that didn't depend on opinion, something that didn't require explanation once it was complete. A structure, one that could stand on its own. Adrian moved through his world thinking in outcomes, deals, numbers, control. Lena moved through hers thinking in sequence, cause, response, pattern. And once a pattern was clear, it didn't disappear, it waited. Her phone dimmed, the room went dark again. But the system she was building stayed. The name that mattered was not Lena Cross. It never had been. On paper, in the world Adrian understood, Lena Cross was simple, a wife, a constant, a quiet presence that required no attention, no analysis, easy to define, easy to overlook. But there was another name, Lena Hart. It didn't appear in Adrian's documents. It didn't pass through his firm. It wasn't spoken in the rooms where he believed power lived. But in other rooms, the ones that actually decided things, that name carried weight. Lena Hart did not attend conferences. She did not give interviews. There were no photos, no public appearances, no carefully managed press releases, only absence, deliberate absence, because visibility, she had learned, could become liability. Years earlier, long before Adrian, long before the life that now filled that house, Lena had understood something most people learned too late. The more people saw you, the easier it was to control you. So she separated everything. Lena Hart built the company. Lena Cross lived the life no one questioned. Different emails, different legal teams, different financial structures. Even her daily movements were calibrated, adjusted just enough to avoid overlap. 2 lives, running in parallel, never touching. Oraline Biotech moved the same way she did. Quiet, controlled, precise. It didn't chase attention. It moved through regulatory lines, research pipelines, acquisition pathways, places where too much exposure could distort outcomes. Deals at that level didn't survive noise. They required distance, protection, structure. Adrian never saw any of it. To him, Lena existed inside a model that made sense. Predictable inputs, stable outputs, no variables worth examining. He believed he understood the system. He believed he was operating at the highest level. But the structure he trusted didn't include her real name. And that difference, that single separation, was everything. Because the company he was chasing, the one tied to a $10 billion deal, was already hers. Adrian talked about the deal even in his sleep. It had become part of him. The rhythm of it, the pressure, the promise. $10 billion, not just a number, a statement. At Hawthorne and Price, the name Aureline Bautek had started as a rumor, quiet, unconfirmed, something moving beneath the surface that only a few people noticed at first. Then the signals appeared, subtle, controlled, enough to pull attention. Adrian moved fast. He positioned himself at the center before anyone else could claim it. Late night calls, revised projections, anticipating objections before they were spoken out loud. He understood what this could mean. Not just success, elevation. The kind that changed how people looked at you when you walked into a room. At home, the deal never left him. He spread documents across the kitchen counter. Numbers, timelines, scenarios. His voice steady, focused. They're disciplined, he said one evening, scanning a report. Whoever runs that company, they don't make careless decisions. Lena stood across from him, rinsing a glass under slow-running water. She didn't respond. Adrian continued, unaware. The CEO doesn't show up anywhere, he said. Everything goes through legal. It's intentional. Smart. He looked up briefly. You wouldn't understand the level they're operating at. It's different. Lena turned off the faucet, dried her hands slowly, folded the towel with care. No, she said quietly. I don't think I would. No sarcasm, no resistance, just the most efficient answer. Adrian nodded, satisfied. His world remained intact, ordered, logical. He believed in presence, in reading people across the table, in finding weakness and hesitation. But Aureline gave him none of that. No face, no reaction, no access, only structure, only silence. So he adapted. He told himself the CEO would appear at the final stage. That was when it mattered. That was when influence could be applied. He imagined that moment often. Walking into the room, taking control, closing the deal. He imagined being seen. What he didn't imagine was that he had already been seen for years, from much closer than he realized. Lena didn't listen to what Adrian said. She listened to how he said it. That was where the truth lived. In the pauses, the timing, the space between words that most people rush to fill. That evening, the house was quiet in the way it always was. Dishes cleared, surfaces wiped, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the gaps. Adrian was in the next room, on the phone. His voice had changed, sharper now, faster. Words like leverage and timing cutting through the doorway. Confident, but not entirely steady. Lena paused by the sink, not to hear the details, to hear the pattern. There it was again, a slight delay before he answered a question. A shift in tone when he was challenged. The confidence that came just a fraction too late, like something he was reaching for instead of owning. Small things, always small things, but they repeated, and repetition turned observation into structure. She dried her hands slowly and reached for her phone. The screen lit up softly in the dim light, a secure note, already layered with entries. She added another, time, context, voice pattern, no judgment, no emotion, just record. Across the city, people were drafting decisions that would shape a company worth $10 billion. In this house, something else was being built. Adrian believed he was moving toward control. He could feel it, the deal tightening, the room getting closer, the moment approaching where everything would align. He believed that because that's how it had always worked for him. Push forward, apply pressure, take the center. But Lena understood something different. Control didn't disappear when it weakened. It revealed itself. It showed where it was thin, where it could break. She closed the note and set her phone down gently. From the other room, Adrian laughed. Short, confident, certain. Lena didn't react. She just stood there in the quiet, because now the pattern was clear. And once something became clear, it didn't need to be questioned anymore. It only needed time. The invitations went out 3 days in advance. Not formal, not elaborate, just deliberate. Adrian liked it that way. A dinner that looked effortless but wasn't. The house was arranged with quiet precision. Soft lighting, glassware aligned, a table set for 6. Not because 6 was necessary, but because 6 felt balanced, controlled. By 7, the doorbell rang. Noah Reed arrived first. Easy smile, polished charm. The kind of man who moved through rooms without leaving a mark. Adrian, he said, stepping inside. Then a nod toward Lena. Good to see you. Lena returned it. Small, measured. Behind him, Clara Vance entered. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning the space before she even spoke. Your home is beautiful, she said, turning to Lena. Thank you, Lena replied. Last came Henry Vale, older, quieter. He didn't fill space. He adjusted it. Adrian, he said, shaking his hand. Then a brief look at Lena, not long, just enough. They settled in quickly. Wine poured, glasses lifted, laughter placed exactly where it belonged. From the outside, it worked. Conversation moved where Adrian directed it, toward the deal, toward projections, toward a future that sounded certain when spoken out loud. But something was off, not enough to name, just enough to feel. Adrian's responses came a beat too fast. His confidence edged slightly into insistence, the kind of shift that happened when pressure had nowhere to go. Henry noticed. He said nothing. Clara noticed. She remembered. Lena noticed. She understood. Dinner moved forward. Courses changed. The conversation narrowed until the table was no longer about food but positioning. So what's their end game? Noah asked, leaning back. Scale, Adrian replied. Expansion without losing control. Do you offer that? Henry asked quietly. Adrian met his gaze. We structure it right, yes. Lena placed the dish on the table. The CEO must trust the process, she said softly. The room shifted. Adrian looked at her. This isn't really your area, Lena, he said, smiling, gentle, closing, silencing. Lena adjusted a fork by a fraction of an inch. Of course, she said. The moment passed. Or at least, it looked like it did. But something had already started to crack. And no one at that table knew how far it would go. The kettle began to hiss, soft at first, then louder. Steam rising in thin, restless lines behind Adrian as he stood at the counter. It was a small moment, ordinary. Almost forgettable. Noah was mid-story, talking about a negotiation he had closed the week before. Clara nodded at the right places. Henry listened without interruption, his attention somewhere deeper than the words. Lena stepped closer to the counter. Let me help, she said. Adrian didn't turn. I've got it. It's fine, she replied, reaching for a cup. Her fingers brushed the edge of the tray. A slight shift, nothing more, but enough. The cup tilted, not falling, not spilling, just close. Adrian turned then, too fast, the movement sharp, unfiltered. And in that single space between reaction and control, something real surfaced. He lifted the kettle, no pause, no correction, just motion. The water hit, a sudden violent heat. The sound came after. Porcelain cracking as the cup slipped from Lena's hand and shattered across the floor. Sharp. Final. For a moment, no one understood what had happened. Then the silence settled, heavy, complete. Lena's body stiffened, just slightly, not enough to draw attention, just enough to contain the impact. The fabric of her sleeve darkened instantly, clinging where the water soaked through. Noah froze. Clara's hand lifted halfway, then stopped. Henry stood slowly. Adrian exhaled, not in shock, not in regret, in control. You should pay attention, he said, his voice low, measured. This isn't a place for carelessness. The words landed harder than the action. Lena didn't speak. She didn't step back, didn't raise her voice. She just looked at him. Then slowly she turned her gaze outward, to Noah, who looked away, to Clara, who held her breath, to Henry, who met her eyes just long enough to understand. In that silence, something shifted. Not loud, not visible, but final, and nothing in that room would ever return to what it was before. No one spoke. The silence came fast, heavy, like the air itself had stopped moving. Lena stood where she was, still. The heat spread under her sleeve, sharp and alive, but her face didn't change. No flinch, no cry. Nothing that could be used to soften what had just happened. Across the table, Noah shifted his weight, then froze again, like he didn't know where to put his eyes. Clara's fingers tightened around her glass, then loosened, then tightened again. Her phone rested low in her lap, angled just enough. Not obvious, not careless. Recording. Henry didn't sit back down. He stayed standing, quiet, watching the space between Adrian and Lena, not the surface, the structure. Adrian set the kettle down with a soft click. "Let's not overreact," he said. Smooth, controlled. It was an accident. The word settled into the room. Accident. A way out. A clean version, something easy to accept. Noah nodded too quickly.
Right, yeah.
Just a slip. Clara said nothing. Henry said nothing. Lena lowered the napkin from her arm. The skin beneath was already turning red, uneven, undeniable. She didn't hide it. She didn't show it. She let it exist. "I'll take care of it," she said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't rise. It stayed exactly where it had always been, calm. Then she turned, one step, then another. Each movement measured, precise, like nothing had broken at all. Behind her, the room didn't recover. No one reached for their glass. No one returned to the conversation. The structure Adrian had built for the night, the balance, the control, the illusion, it didn't collapse loudly. It fractured, quietly, permanently. Clara's phone remained steady for 1 second longer. Just enough. Then she lowered it. And in that small, silent decision, the truth stopped belonging to the room. The emergency room didn't ask what happened first. It asked for facts. Name, time, injury. Lena sat upright under the cold white lights, her arm exposed, the fabric of her sleeve cut away cleanly. The air smelled sharp, sterile, movement all around her. Fast, efficient. Name, the nurse asked. Lena Cross. Time of incident, approximately 8:47 in the evening. Nature of injury, thermal burn, right shoulder, upper arm. Her voice didn't change.
Didn't slow.
Didn't break. The nurse wrote it down without looking up. Another nurse adjusted the lighting. A doctor stepped in, examining the skin with steady hands. "Second degree," he said, more to the chart than to her. "We'll clean it, dress it, monitor for complications." Lena nodded once, no questions, no explanation. Cool water ran over the burn. Sharp, immediate, the kind of pain that demanded reaction. She didn't give it one. She watched it instead. The way the water moved, the way the redness spread, like observing something outside herself. "Do you know how this happened?" the nurse asked softly. "Yes." A pause. "Would you like to share that with us?" Lena didn't answer right away, not because she didn't know.
Because she understood the moment.
"Boiling water," she said. The nurse nodded, wrote it down. No follow-up. Not yet. Across the room, a clipboard was updated. A digital record expanded. Codes assigned. Images taken. Each step added weight. Each detail locked into place. Lena reached for her phone, not urgently, deliberately. She opened the camera, took one photo, then another. Adjusted the angle, the lighting, the clarity, documentation. She set the phone down. On the screen, a call came in. Adrian. She looked at it for a second, then turned the phone face down. The call stopped. A message followed. "Where are you?" Another. "You left without saying anything." Then one more. "This is getting out of hand." Lena didn't respond. Instead, she looked at the nurse. "I'd like copies of everything," she said. The nurse nodded. "Of course. No judgment, just process." And in that system, the story had already begun to change. She didn't rush. That was the difference. Most people reacted, spoke too soon, moved before the structure was ready. Lena didn't. She built. The first meeting was quiet, no name on the door, no sign outside, just a space that didn't need attention to function. Sarah Quinn sat across from her, reading without interruption, page after page, notes, screenshots, timelines. When she finally looked up, her expression didn't change. "You've already started," she said. Lena nodded. "I wanted it in place before involving anyone else." Sarah flipped another page, slower this time. "This is thorough," she said. "More than most people bring. I didn't want to rely on memory." "You're not," Sarah replied. "You're relying on evidence." The words settled between them. Evidence, not opinion. not emotion. Structure. Sarah closed the folder halfway. What outcome are you preparing for? Lena didn't answer immediately, not because she didn't know, because she understood the weight of saying it out loud. Separation, she said. Protection. Containment. Containment of what? Lena met her eyes. Him. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Precise. Sarah leaned back slightly, studying her.
In your professional position?
It remains separate. Any overlap? No. A pause. Then Sarah nodded. Then we proceed carefully. She sudden moves. No confrontation. We build until it stands on its own. Lena inclined her head. That's what I've been doing. And we continue. Back home, nothing changed. That was the point. Same morning. Same movements. Same quiet presence that had always allowed Adrian to underestimate her. But beneath that, something else had formed. Lena requested archived bank records through secure channels Adrian couldn't see. She aligned dates with calendar entries, transactions with behavior, patterns with pressure points. What once looked isolated began again to connect. A transfer that didn't belong. Another one. Then another. Different amounts. Same structure. Money didn't move like that without intention. Lena didn't react. She labeled stored, cross-referenced, no conclusions. Not yet, because incomplete truth could be dismissed, and she wasn't collecting fragments. She was building something that couldn't be denied. The video arrived without warning, no message, no explanation, just a file forwarded, one line above it. You may want to keep this. Lena opened it immediately, no hesitation. The screen flickered once, then steadied. The room appeared, the dinner table, the glasses, the soft lighting that had tried to make everything look normal. It looked smaller now, distant, like something's already finished. Noah's voice came first, mid-sentence, casual, unaware. Then the angle shifted slightly, subtle, careful. Clara had been recording, not openly, low, discreet, intentional. Lena watched, not quickly, not emotionally, precisely. There she was, moving toward the counter, reaching for the cup, the slight shift. The moment that could still be explained away if it had stopped there. But it didn't. Adrian turned. Too fast. The kettle lifted. No pause, no correction. The water struck. Clear, undeniable, not blurred, not lost in motion. Exact. The sound followed. Porcelain breaking. A sharp intake of breath somewhere off frame. Then silence. Heavy. Final. Adrian's voice cut through it. You should pay attention. Calm. Measured. Certain. Lena didn't look away from the screen. She watched herself, standing there, still, looking at him, then at the others. No performance, no reaction, only awareness. The video ended, no fade, no edit, just stop. Lena closed it slowly, not as rejection, as completion. It was enough. Later, across the same quiet office, Sarah watched it too. Once, then again. This time, she didn't speak immediately. She set the tablet down with care. This changes everything, she said. Lena didn't move. How? We had documentation before, Sarah said. Now we have a confirmation. The word carried weight.
Confirmation.
No ambiguity, she continued. No reinterpretation. This establishes intent. Lena reached for the tablet again, not to watch, to check. Timestamp. Source. Continuity. Everything aligned. Will it hold? She asked. Sarah met her eyes. Yes, a pause. As long as we protect it. Lena nodded once. That wouldn't be a problem. Because she hadn't been waiting for proof. She'd been waiting for clarity. And now she had it. The room was already waiting for him. Quiet. Controlled. Too clean. Adrian stepped inside with his usual confidence, the kind that had carried him through every room that mattered. He placed his documents down, took his seat, looked around. Maya Lawson sat to the left, still, watching. Legal teams lined the far side, papers aligned, faces unreadable. One seat remained empty. At the head of the table, Adrian didn't question it. Not yet. He began speaking. Clear, structured, confident. He walked them through projections, timelines, integration strategy, every point delivered with precision, every sentence placed exactly where it needed to be. For a moment, it felt familiar, like control was still within reach. Then the door opened, soft, almost silent, but the room shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Adrian turned and saw her, Lena, walking in with the same calm pace she carried through their home. No hesitation, no urgency, just presence. For a second, his mind stalled because this didn't fit. Not the setting, not the structure, not anything he understood. She didn't look at him, not immediately. She walked to the empty seat and sat down at the head of the table. No one reacted. No surprise, no confusion. Daniel Reeves spoke. For the record, he said, voice steady, this meeting is now an executive session. A pause. Then Lena Hart, Chief Executive Officer. The name landed. Heavy. Absolute. Lena Hart, not Lena Cross. Not the woman he had corrected. Silenced. Defined. The one who had been standing in his house was the one who owned this room. Adrian opened his mouth. Nothing came out because every assumption he had built collapsed. Lena finally looked at him. Calm. Clear. Unchanged. Mr. Cross, she said. Professional. Distant. Thank you for coming. No anger. No satisfaction. Just finality. She opened the folder in front of her. We'll proceed. And just like that, the room moved forward. Without him. Without his control. Without his version of the story. And there was nothing left for him to stop it. The documents arrived without noise. No raised voices. No confrontation. Just paper. Clean. Precise. Final. Adrian sat alone in his office when he opened them. The same desk. The same view. Everything exactly where it had always been, except nothing was the same. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Request for protective order. The words didn't need explanation. They needed acceptance. He read them once. Then again, slower this time. Each line structured. Each detail placed exactly where it belonged. Date, time, location, the incident, the witnesses, the medical records, no exaggeration, no emotion, just alignment. He reached for his phone, called her. It rang, then stopped. A message appeared. Please direct all communication through counsel. He stared at it. Counsel, not discussion, not conversation. Structure, distance, end. At the firm, the shift came just as quietly. He was asked to step back from the deal, not removed, not dismissed, just step back. But the room no longer waited for him. Meetings continued without his voice. Decisions moved forward without his input. His presence no longer required. Control didn't collapse. It disappeared. Lena didn't return to argue, didn't explain, didn't revisit anything that had already been defined. She packed what mattered, left what didn't. When Adrian saw her one last time, she stood in the living room, organizing files with the same quiet precision. You could have told me, he said. She looked up. I did. A pause. Every time it mattered, he took a step forward. This didn't have to go this way. Lena considered that, then shook her head just slightly. Once it happened, she said, it did. Silence, heavy, complete. You're ending everything over one moment. She met his eyes. No, she said, over all of them. That was the difference. He saw an incident. She saw a pattern. And patterns, once clear, don't disappear. Months later, the deal closed. Different structure, different leadership. Better alignment. Lena stood at the window of her new apartment, the city moving below her like nothing had changed. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because she hadn't destroyed anything. She had simply stepped away, and in that quiet decision, she took everything that mattered with her.